Hello and welcome once again to Beatle University. I am Professor Moptop, and today we take a break from our regularly scheduled program to say happy birthday to Beatle George, and we're going to talk about one of my favorite things to talk about, the All Things Must Pass album. George recorded his first solo album throughout 1970, and he had an all-star lineup of musicians, and when it's 1970 and you're an ex-Beatle, you get the cream of the all-star crop. On the record was fellow former Beatle Ringo Starr,
peace and love,
along with Jim Gordon and Alan White taking care of the drum duties, and quite possibly Ginger Baker as well. As we've discussed, the Beatles took poor notes on who plays what on what, and with many missing or inaccurate details, George might be just as bad. Also during the time of recording, there was a lot of legal troubles for George. Some of his friends played on the album but didn't get credit due to the record label contracts and stuff. That's how cool it was to play on George's album. You'd do it for free. George sings on all the songs and plays guitar as well. He does a bit of harmonica, and there's possibly some bass work by George, possibly even a xylophone. Very sloppy notes. Eric Clapton and Dave Mason also help out with some guitar work, as did Pete Drake, who plays the pedal steel guitar on the album. Tom Evans, Joey Molland, and Pete Ham from Badfinger helped build the wall of sound by playing a small army of acoustic guitars on several of the tracks, while their drummer, Mike Gibbons, helped along with some various undocumented bits of percussion. Billy Preston, Gary Wright, Tony Ashton, and Bobby Whitlock all play some sort of keyboards on the album, and Klaus Vorman and Carl Rattle both play the bass for the recordings. Jim Price and Bobby Keys supplied horns, which were frequently turned into a wall of horns by producer Phil Spector. There's also a rumor that a young Phil Collins was there at some point as well, shaking tambourines or something. There's also a lot of conflicting reports about Peter Frampton, Maurice Gibb, Richard Wright, and possibly John Lennon himself, all playing at some point or another on the album. Very sloppy note-taking. Vocals were likely done by George and George only, but possibly a few others joined in as well. George quite enjoyed multi-tracking his voice, which was a relatively new toy for the freshly solo artist. On the album, the credit is introducing the George O'Hara Smith Singers. There's also a long-standing rumor that the band backing George on Behind That Locked Door is indeed the band, who George was friends with through mutual friend Bob Dylan. George co-wrote the opening track I'd Have You Anytime with Bob Dylan, and George did his own version of If Not For You, which was from Dylan's 1970 New Morning album.
If not for you, babe, I couldn't find the door, couldn't even see the floor, I'd be sad and blue, if not for you.
Also credited on the album was Mal Evans, who was a close friend to all the Beatles. He was their go-to guy for a lot of things. Mal has the credit of Tea and Sympathy, which might be code for holding the stuff and keeping the wives away. He also might have played a tambourine as well, and he does do a bit of singing.
It's Johnny's birthday, it's Johnny's birthday, and we would like to wish him all the very best. It's Johnny's birthday, it's Johnny's birthday, and it's so nice to have you back to be our guest.
It was Mal along with engineer Eddie Klein and George himself singing Happy Birthday to John Lennon on It's Johnny's Birthday, which featured a backwards tape message, presumably directed at Paul. The release was a triple album, with a whole third record called The Apple Jams that were just long, unrehearsed instrumentals. For the Apple Jams, Clapton, along with Carl Rattle, Bobby Whitlock, and Jim Gordon joined George. These four musicians, along with Duane Allman, would go on to form Derek and the Dominoes and record Layla and other assorted love songs. For the Apple Jam record, there's a lot more undocumented reports about who plays what on what. Extremely sloppy note-taking. One of the Apple Jams is called I Remember Jeep, titled after Eric Clapton's dog, a funny kind of orangey brown dog with pink eyes. The dog has probably kicked it by now. That's a direct quote from George. Another Apple gem was called Thanks for the Pepperoni, named after a line from The Sick Humor of Lenny Bruce, a comedy album from 1959.
Sure, that's easy for you to say. You're over there. Yeah, I know. And thanks for the pepperoni.
You know, to just go ahead, George. Go on and fly away, babe. Just be free and go. And we'll see you down the line. Just leave, go to someplace nice. We're gonna be all right here.
Wherever you are in the universe, George, here's wishing you a happy birthday from Beetle University. Until then, class dismissed. I am Professor Moptop.
1, 2, 3, 4.
A Moptop production.
Very good.